Hello, Playful Warriors, and welcome to another episode of Climate for Fun, the podcast that turns climate change into a laughing matter. Here's Antonio Salituro, climate scientist, writer, and comedian. I'm thrilled to have Brian Ettling with me today. Brian is a climate change comedian, educator, communicator, public speaker, writer, lobbyist, organizer, and advocate for solution. Wow. That's the longest title I've ever come across. Anyway, welcome. Welcome, Brian, and thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much, Antonio. The pleasure is mine.
Thanks a lot. Ready to make us laugh about climate change?
I will do my best.
Cool.
I'm here to laugh also.
I'm sure you will. Okay, let's crack on with some questions, though, if you're happy with that.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So, Brian, you are the first climate comedian being invited on this podcast. So you got the honors of acknowledging the existence of your speeches, right? So my first question is, could you please prove that you're a real person, not a chatbot or something, yeah?
Wow, am I a real person? To be honest, as far as the bot thing, gosh, one of the first things I learned about climate change when I studied about 11 years ago is that people have an infinite pool of worry. You know, for instance, if your computer is crashing and you're you have the potential of being chased by a tiger or being bitten by a poisonous snake, you're going to be more worried about the animal in front of you and not that your computer is crashing here. True. In my infinite pool of worry, I'm worried about climate change, our democracy, a woman's right to choose, kind of those things. And I even thought about the bots and like cryptocurrency and maybe some of these other problems that will end up destroying our civilization. But for me, at the top, I'm just worried about climate change and our democracy and then people losing their rights. That's probably not very funny, is it?
Well, yeah. But I mean, honestly, speaking of chatbots, you know, they might become better than humans at writing jokes. I mean, I'm afraid. So are you ready for extinction? I mean, seriously. Do you see them as a threat or an opportunity for more effective climate communication? I mean,
I'm still more I have my ball in the court, my vote for real people. Yeah. I don't know. Humor comes from spontaneity. Maybe a computer can do that. Yeah. I don't know. I've never heard of a computer telling a good joke yet. Have you? Or maybe I'm just kind of. I've always been a techno lagger. Is my thing.
Okay. Well, hopefully they won't be as good as us. Yeah. I'm really hoping so. Anyway, I'm sure you'll survive the bot invasion because you're a great comedian. Yeah. And I realized that straight away. In one of your first emails, you said that you were impressed by my podcast as I invited Joram Bauman. Except you wrote Joram Batman. I mean, now, was it meant to be a joke or a subliminal message for the Joker?
Well, the truth is I'm a terrible speller.
Oh.
And so what I did is I've always struggled. I'm a huge fan. And at one point I tried to contact him on Facebook.
Okay.
And he was like, "Why are you contacting me? Who the hell are you?" I'm such a huge fan. I've always struggled. It's a very distinct name, and you do have to spell it and pronounce it right. And so I failed miserably the other day in my email to you.
That's all right. I mean, honestly, you killed me, to be honest. I mean,
good.
Do you know if it was a joke? You could have told me it was a joke, to be honest. I mean, you know, I would have believed that. I would have believed that.
you know, and I don't want to. You should not blame. But have you had a problem with? I'm not having a problem with bots, but I am having a problem with autocorrect. You know, when you have it. So if you had that where you know you've spelled it correctly, and autocorrect's like, no, that's not how it is. And so I'm wondering if autocorrect somehow interfered here too. But I might be making an excuse here for my bad spelling.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I mean, I'm pretty bad with names, to be honest, in general. So you know, I'm with you. I'm with you on that. Right. So you came up with the idea of becoming a climate comedian while house sitting for one of your friends. So how bad was that house? Surely it couldn't be messier than our planet, right?
Well, actually, she was an older German woman that had a house that was super clean, spick and span here. It was immaculate. what happened was that the kind of the longer part of the story was I was a seasonal park ranger at Crater Lake National Park
Okay.
for 25 years. And I would go back home to St. Louis for the winter. Well, my friend Graham, he was like, you don't want to go back to St. Louis. You should house sit for my mom in Ashland, Oregon. And Ashland, Oregon, by the way, is really beautiful. It's nestled up against the mountains of the Siskiyous and Southern Oregon. It's about 10 miles north of the California border. It's famous for its Shakespeare Festival. It's just a romantic, beautiful college town. I mean, if you had to be parachuted anywhere, Ashland, Oregon's not a bad place to end up. So I was house sitting there for 2 months, and I was kind of bored out of my mind.
Right.
Is what it is. And it's a beautiful house. And actually, Barbara, the owner of the house, she had this beautiful, fluffy cat named Poppy. And Poppy was clinging to me like glue the whole day. This beautiful cat loved me.
Yeah.
And so I was bored. I went there without a job because I just said yes to house sitting for a friend, kind of as a favor. And it was funny, too. I went there as a favor, and I ended up paying rent as a house sitter. You know, I'm keeping this immaculate house clean.
Yeah.
And I had this friend Naomi in Ashland, Oregon, and she's kind of a spiritual advisor, kind of one of those coaches that'll help you with your life, kind of thing.
Nice.
And she was asking me, well, what exactly do you want to do with your life? Because she knew I was concerned about climate change. I saw climate change in the national parks, working at Crater Lake National Park in the Everglades.
Yeah.
And so she was really pressing me, what do you want to do with your life? And the thing is that if you want to be a good park ranger, you have to have a sense of humor. People are not going to a national park for a ranger program for a dry as dust college lecture.
Yeah.
They want to know that you're having fun, that you're not taking yourself too seriously, that you're making their vacation enjoyable. So I had to come up with some jokes, probably a lot of bad ones, on the fly to be a good ranger. So she's pressing me on, really trying to get to the essence of what do you want to do with your life? And finally, I just blurted out, fine, I want to be the climate change comedian.
Woo.
and actually, Naomi was always a tough audience. But this is one of the few times in my life where Naomi actually, literally, she just about fell out of her chair laughing. She laughed so hard. And she said, I want you to go home and grab that website domain immediately. And I did that. And so I gave myself this grandiose title, not knowing what to do with it, but it was on a dare from a friend. It's basically the short answer to your question. As I was bored on my mind, house sitting and I was actually in an immaculate house in Ashland, Oregon.
Cool. That's good. That sounds good. And okay, so while reading one of your blogs, I came across a Dan Miller joke that cracked me up. I quote, talking about climate change can feel like farting at a cocktail party, yeah? It's hilarious because it's true, to be honest. Let's face it. Climate change is not a very pleasant topic for most people, to say the least. So my question is, what's your best tactic to release your climate tear gas without dispersing the crowd, you know?
Yeah, that's a great question, Antonio. What I do is I focus my talks on my background as a national park ranger. I stopped being a ranger in 2017 so I could be more of a climate advocate, activist, and I guess a comedian also.
Yeah.
But if somebody books me for a presentation, I'll spend a good amount of time of talking about my background as a ranger and showing up fantastic pictures of national parks and the place I listen to. So that's where I hook my audience in. So I'm still kind of channeling that ranger energy there. And so I talk about how beautiful the parks are. And then I start going into shifting about climate change, how climate change is happening. And then I try to always shift into solutions also, because you can't leave people on a downer note. You can't be a Debbie Downer about it. You got to give people some hope here too, that they can actually do something about it also.
Yeah.
So I've always led with national parks, because people love national parks, and they love park rangers, they love outdoors, they love natures. So that's what I try to do, is I'm trying to disperse that gas in the room.
That's cool. That's good. That's good. So yeah, talking about presentations. So besides being a climate comedian, you are a climate communicator as well. So just like me, you are a member of the Toastmaster Association, which is great.
Yes.
So first, let me clarify with our listeners that this is not a wine tasting society. Yeah, it's just a club. That's what I thought the first time I heard about that. To be honest, so yeah, it's just a club where people can improve their public speaking skills. Yeah. As of today, you gave over 200 climate change talk across the US, which is impressive. Mm-hmm. So based on your experience, what are the 3 top tips you give to someone who wants to talk about climate change with their colleagues, friends, or family?
Yeah, that's a great question here. So number 1, I would say, is talk about it. Yeah. So Yale Climate Communications, they've done surveys about this for years, and they say the top thing that's happening in the U.S. is that the average American does not talk about it, right, and they do not hear their friends and family talk about it. So the number 1 thing you can do is to talk about it.
Cool.
And I know it's a lot. It took me years to be comfortable talking about it. But it's so important that we at least broach the subject, talk about it, be out in the open about it.
So let's release the fart. Let's say, the first one.
But Catherine Hayhoe, climate scientist from Texas Tech University, she says her top tip is, number 1, she says the same thing, talk about it. People don't talk about it, so you need to talk about it.
Yeah.
But when you talk about it, find something in common with the person that you're talking with.
Okay.
So for instance, if you find out if the person is a fisherman, talk about how it's affecting the fish in the rivers, how the temperatures are going up. Okay. Whatever you have in common with that person, lead with that subject. So in my case, I've learned that most people love national parks, nature, and the outdoors, and park rangers. So that's the subject I lead with, because people are like, "Oh, you're a park ranger." When I was a seasonal park ranger, that's all that people wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
So I would, So if I was at a cocktail party, if we're at a party, I would have to kind of talk about that. And so then, so you talk about that. So, I would kind of shift into, climate change is happening in national parks. That's one of the things I've focused on as a park ranger. Yeah. And then the third thing is have fun. For most people, they approach this subject as kind of a Debbie Downer.
Yeah.
As kind of like the world is ending. It's so bad. They want to scare people with this subject. Mm-hmm. And there's actually science out there that, and actually it was done 11 years ago, called Apocalypse Soon. And I think this was out of the University of California, Berkeley, that if you talk to people just about the problem of climate change and don't talk about the solutions, people are even less likely to do something. So you have to have some optimism in there. Talk about solutions, talk about things that you're doing. If you put solar panels on a house, talk about how you love it. If you've got an electric car, talk about how you love it. If you've been talk about solutions, talk about hope. People need to hear that. So because people too often get down into the depressing parts of climate change, how bad it is, how bad the storms are, those things. But focus on the positive.
Climate doom talk, it put people off, essentially, basically.
Yeah, we've all heard enough of it. Yeah,
true. Okay, so during your presentation, you harness some visual aids, Being a public speaker myself, I know props can boost the impact of your message. So while showing an earth ball makes sense to me, I was a bit puzzled, to be honest, when seeing a rubber chicken in your hands. So were you trying to encourage people to go vegan or what?
Well, here's where I have full disclosure.
Yeah,
I have no idea what I'm doing with the rubber chickens. And, rubber chicken,
which is fun.
Yes, the rubber chickens actually goes back to the year 2008.
Ooh,
and
an old chick.
This, when I was a seasonal park ranger at Crater Lake National Park, and we always had 3 weeks of training before the season would start. Yeah. And it was basically the first 3 weeks of June, towards the end of July, and we would have 3 days of training for the boat tours on Crater Lake. And one of the full days of training was just about boat safety. The water at Crater Lake, the temperature of the water is about 40 degrees. So if you go overboard, you only have a couple minutes to get somebody back in the boat before they're really freezing hypothermia.
Wow.
So the other thing about the boat tours is that you have to walk down 1,000 feet to the water. The trail drops 700 feet. It's 1.1 miles. So I'm the first responder on scene. So we would have to be prepared to deal with heart attacks.
Wow, yeah.
Bee sting, people rocks hitting them. I mean, there's everything you could think of. So we had a full day of first aid training. So this law enforcement ranger, because we were being trained with the law enforcement rangers, and they also double as EMTs, which is an emergency medical technician.
Okay.
My friend Peter Sween, he had this idea of a skit that we would do for triage, medical triage, meaning that if you have an incident with more than one person that's been injured, how do you kind of designate who to treat first? That's what triage is about.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And so he came up with this skit with rubber chickens, and there'd be a pregnant rubber chicken. There'd be a dead rubber chicken. There'd be a chicken with a head injury. There was a chicken with a broken leg.
Right.
And he had me playing a French waiter. And it sounded like an interesting skit. Why not? Because, again, like my previous question, that was like always the worst day of training, to hear all day long the various ways of people can die or get hurt. Yeah. After I did that training, Antonio, I kid you not, I wanted to go around life wrapped in bubble wrap. So they have this extra layer of protection. So Peter wanted to have fun with this skit. And so then he says to me, Brian, I don't know if I can go to the chief ranger and ask him to order rubber chickens. Can you go to your boss and ask him to order the rubber chickens? And so I went to the lead, or kind of the supervisor of interpretive rangers at Crater Lake. And he was a wonderful guy. His name was Eric Anderson. He was a Norwegian that lived in Hawaii, and he had a great sense of humor too. Cool. So I went to Eric and I said, I need you to order 6 rubber chickens for a skit on triage. And Eric said to me, he goes, are we going to be using these rubber chickens again? And I said, oh, sure, absolutely, we'll be using these rubber chickens again. And, he kind of gave me the evil eye ordering these rubber chickens here. And so then we ordered them, and the skit went well, and then I had no idea what the hell to do with these rubber chickens. So I'm still trying to figure out what to do with them. So when I took the title of climate change comedian, I just happened to have these rubber chickens on hand.
There you go.
And that's what I've been using them for. And it was funny that you asked that, because when I did Tosh.0 on Comedy Central 6 years ago, Daniel Tosh was asking me the same thing. Yeah. Are we supposed to laugh at rubber chickens? And I guess it's because I'm still trying to figure out what to do with these props. I don't know what else to do with them. That's basically the answer to your question.
That's actually what makes them funny, to be honest. No purpose, like at all.
No purpose. I don't know what to do with them.
Yeah, really.
Tell me what should I do with them.
Yeah, attracts attention, which is good. It's good. Okay, so on your blog, you wrote that you're also lobbying for climate-friendly laws. So yes. I know legislators had to deal with a clown like Donald Trump until a couple of years ago, but they're not just laughing at you. Or what?
Well, some legislators maybe are laughing at me. When I've been to Washington, D.C. 8 times, and I lobbied in Canada too, for members of parliament, which was a lot of fun too. Yeah. And then I've lobbied at the state level with state legislators and staff. So when you go to Washington, D.C., 9 out of 10 times, or maybe 99 out of 100 times, you're actually lobbying the congressional staff, not the members of Congress. I mean,
right.
It happens now and then, but more than likely you're talking with the gatekeepers, the staff.
Right.
And a couple of things can happen is that a lot of times when you're meeting with the Republican staff, they're not interested in climate change. I mean, they're just there to kind of like, you're a constituent, or they've met you and they've liked you. And so they're just kind of like graciously meeting with you. But more than likely, they're not going to support your legislation. So they're kind of laughing at you, kind of behind your back. Right. But you still meet with them because it's so important to give truth to power. And comedy is ultimately about telling truth in a humorous way. That we're laughing at the world in a humorous way, but we're seeking a truth that that we're maybe uncomfortable to talk about, but we're laughing about it. So for the Republicans, yeah, they're probably laughing at me, but I still have a good meeting with them. And then what's funny is that the Democrats, a lot of times, yeah, they totally agree with you. We should do something about climate change, but they're laughing too because they want to do something, they want to be helpful, but they're being blocked by Republicans. Or I've had the situation of I lobby with Citizens Climate Lobby,
Right.
and we've been lobbying for a revenue neutral carbon tax known as carbon fee dividend, and this is a very moderate, central, pragmatic policy. Right. And so when I meet with this congressional staff of very progressive legislators, and some of them are on board, some of them have actually co-sponsored our legislation, but others, such as my own member of Congress, he's pretty much skeptical. He's been kind of very negative about helping us because he's very, very progressive. So yeah, I've been laughed at. The short answer, but I've been laughed at by the far right and the far left.
Okay.
But not exactly to my face, but probably they have. But you know what? Comedy is about, again, it's about finding your truth. Yeah. And I've always believed that even if people are laughing at me, at least they're laughing.
Yeah, it's still worth trying, to be honest. Yeah, that's
yes.
Okay, cool. So are there two weird questions? So tell me one thing about climate change that makes you laugh. Of course, no rubber chicken involved. Yeah.
There is zero about climate change itself that makes me laugh.
Okay.
To be honest with you, because climate change, when we get down to it, is really a threat to our civilization and our way of life on the planet. We're talking about, millions of people possibly dying in third world countries because of too much heat, hurricanes, droughts, floods.
That's true.
And even the same thing happened to people in the U.S. And it's going to happen that it impacts the poorest of the poor.
Yeah.
The science is deadly serious about how bad climate change is. So I don't really find any humor in the science of climate change itself. What I do is when I give a presentation, I'm making fun of myself. I'm an idiot. I'm still having a hard time understanding this. I am not the smartest guy in the room. I don't understand the science exactly. I misspell things, I get things wrong. So I'm an idiot trying to tell you something about something that's deadly serious is kind of where my humor comes from. I set myself as the idiot in the room.
Well, self-irony is good.
Yeah.
It's a good thing. Okay, well, so tell me one fun thing people can do to fight climate change.
Yeah, and that's a great thing. And again, I think it really comes down to talking about it. And
obviously,
for me, I think one of the most fun things I do is I live in Portland, Oregon, and I love taking the bus and the light rail, the MAX trains as much as possible. The cool thing is about taking public transit is that, for years I was scared of taking the bus because, who knows who rides on the buses. And there are some interesting characters. But I get to read a book on the bus. You can't read a book while you're driving. Please don't read a book while you're driving.
That's a good point, yeah. Don't try it home.
But so when I meet with people, when I go to meetings, as often as I can, I take public transit. I try not to drive. I don't like to drive. I still drive because I want to go visit national parks and nature now and then. But I really try to take mass transit, public transportation. So that's one thing you do. Okay. Ride a bike. The cool thing about riding a bike instead of driving a car is you get this thing called exercise too. So
some people say it is good.
Yeah. And the other thing too is you mentioned vegetarian before, which maybe there is a message there with my rubber chicken.
Yeah.
I read this 30 years ago in a book called Finance for Dummies. Okay. If you go vegetarian or vegan, which I'm not totally, but I eat vegetarian most of the time. Yeah. But if you do go vegetarian or vegan, it's actually a cheaper budget than buying all that meat. So a lot of these things for solutions for climate change, it'll will save you money, which is the good news.
That's true.
And you'll live healthier. You'll live a healthier, happier life if you do it. You're reading a book instead of being cursing at the people cutting you off in traffic.
Yeah. That definitely sounds like a good reason to do that, to switch to vegan. Yeah. Okay, so now the floor is yours. It's your moment. Yeah. Just tell me one joke, live like that on climate change.
Well, I don't know if I really have a climate change joke per se, but this is the joke I've been using in my Toastmasters presentations,
Okay.
and this will kind of show you how bad of a joke teller I am. So the whole joke I came up with, I do have a series of YouTube videos. I did like 4 of them in 2014 and 2015. First with my fiance Tanya, and she's not my wife. We got married in 2015. I did one with my mom, Fran Ettling, who's also a pianist, and then my dad was like, "Well, I want to be in a video," so I did one with my dad also. And the premise I came up with, and I kind of, to be honest, I kind of stole it from Seinfeld. Seinfeld was always about his show was about nothing, and I kind of think of myself as the comic who's actually not funny here. So the tagline I had my wife Tanya say and my mom say is, I would try to tell a joke, and I actually would get out the rubber chicken. It's like, you're not very funny. So I'm actually practicing for an upcoming Toastmasters speech, Antonio.
Yeah.
And you're right. It's like Robin Williams used to talk about this, how he'd be at the airport. This is on a Fresh Air interview with Terry Gross on NPR. And people would say to Robin Williams, they'd say, be funny, like that to him. And it's like, well, what the hell am I supposed to do when you're supposed to be funny on the spot? So I'm practicing for a Toastmasters speech, and I share this joke that I came up with that actually my fellow park rangers thought it was funny, but it's not that funny. Well, the joke I came up with is, what did one continental plate say to the other after the earthquake? Any ideas?
Can't think of anything.
The answer is, it's not my fault.
Well, okay, yeah. It's very honestly, if you got a geology background, it's very good. It's very good. I think it's very good. Maybe not all of people will appreciate if you don't know what the fault is, but honestly, if you know it, you're gonna laugh. That's great.
Oh, good. Well, actually, I didn't think it was that funny, but the funny thing was that my fellow. Oh, good. I'm so glad you did. Yeah. Oh, good. Maybe this is my start then. Well, the funny thing is that I didn't think the joke was that funny, but my fellow park rangers did. So what I would do is now and then I would be attending their programs to evaluate them, or just to kind of, we do steal from each other as park rangers.
Yeah.
And I'd hear that joke and they would outright tell me it was for me.
Okay.
And they were getting a pretty good response or groans from the audience.
Yeah.
So I use that joke in my talks now because, like you said, I guess you need some type of example of humor. So I use that one. Yeah. And to be honest with you, Antonio, something really funny happened to me last night. Is I was practicing my speech for a friend.
Yeah.
And she said to me, she goes, you need to address your a question in your talk of why the climate change comedian. And I thought nobody's ever asked me that before. And I thought that was a good one. Yeah. So it's now in my speech. And so why the climate change comedian? And the answer is, drum roll. I don't know.
That's good.
I took the title on a dare, and I still don't know what to do with it. But I guess I'm doing this marriage of the seriousness of climate change and not taking myself or life too seriously. Because to be honest, I think we're going to solve this problem when we put our creative juices and our fun to it, not when we just wallow up in the doom and gloom.
I think
so. The answer is that I'm still working on the jokes, but the joke is on me because I still consider myself an idiot trying to understand the science of it.
Cool. It's all right. You're not an idiot. Anyway, it's quiz time now, yeah? So you ready for my Who Wants to Be Climate Aware quiz? Yeah?
Sure.
So you just need to answer 3 multiple choice questions. So it's only for the glory though, yeah? No money involved. Okay, so first question. I know you're driving different vehicles when working as a park ranger. So I don't know if you normally leave your vehicle idling. But my first question for you is, how much CO2 does a light goods vehicle emit while idling for 10 minutes? You got 3 options. As much as charging 34 smartphones. As much as 34 bears charging a park ranger, as much as 34 bees charging Yogi Bear after stealing their honey. So, which one do you go for?
I'm going to go for A.
Yeah, you're right. It's not the most fun, but you're right. Okay, I got another one which is very relevant to you. So what is climate quitting? So A, handing in a notice because it's either too hot or too cold to work in the office. B, quitting your job to switch to a more climate conscious one. C, hoping climate is just like teenagers that will quit changing their mood over time. Which one you go for?
I'm gonna go for B.
And there you go. You got two in a row. That's good. That's good. That's good. You're on a strike. Okay. Last question. Yeah, you can do 3 out of 3. Yeah. So, who said that the most important environmental movement in the world is the American oil and gas industry? So, A, Greta Thunberg after drinking 1 gallon of gasoline during one of her climate protests. B, the American Petroleum Institute CEO. C, Al Gore during a joke competition with Brian Ettling.
You know what's funny is that Bill McKibben talks about that a lot. If you would have had Bill McKibben, I would have gravitated towards that one.
Okay.
So since D, Bill McKibben, because he talked about that before, the most powerful force in the history of the planet's been the fossil fuel industry, and he says we must be an even more powerful force to overcome that.
Yeah.
Since you don't have Bill McKibben there, I'm going to go with Greta Thunberg.
After drinking 1 gallon of gasoline during one climate
but...
protest. Yeah. Oh well, it could have. I mean, it could be. I don't know. It could be. I still don't give it out. Are you sure? You confirm that?
Well, now that you, but the second part, I doubt she's ever done that. Okay, I guess I'll go with B, the fossil fuel industry.
Yeah, the American Petroleum Institute CEO. Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so you managed to get out 3 out of 3. Yeah.
Whew, that was a close one because I almost you had me with Greta Thunberg at hello, even though I deliberately ignored all the other parts.
Yeah. You missed the crazy bit. Anyway, right. That's the end of this Climate for Fun episode. Brian, thank you so much for your fun contribution. You were amazing, to be honest.
Oh, thank you so much, Antonio. This has been a blast.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And of course, thanks to whoever tuned in today. Next episode will be in a month as usual. In the meantime, remember to fight climate change one laugh at a time. Ciao.